Welcome to this edition of the People's Playbook podcast. I have to tell you, I'm pretty stoked today and jacked because we have been trying to get Sherry McNeil on this podcast for a while. Life has kind of, happened and we've been wrestling along the way to get her on here. But Sherry is the CEO of the Canadian Franchise Association, which many of you know based on the great work that they do. She's a powerhouse in this sector who's helped grow brands in her previous life and the life she's in now, like Dairy Queen, Boston Pizza, and now she champions just helping entrepreneurs coast to coast. With that, Sherry, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, and I'm very happy to be here. So let's talk about leadership and franchising.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let's get right into it. So you've worked in so many levels of this sector, right? So from store level operations to leading the Canadian Franchise Association. How did those early experiences when you were, let's say carrying a bag and going store to store and all that, how did that actually shape your leadership style?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to align on first before we get started.
Yep.
So first thing, the Canadian Franchise Association, because you might have some listeners who don't know who we are. Yep. We are the not-for-profit association that represents franchising in Canada. And franchising is the 12th largest industry in Canada. We contribute $133 billion annually to the GDP.
Wow.
And so our goal is to get into the top 10. I always joke with the team that I'm going to retire when we get into the top 10.
No, you won't. No, you won't.
The other thing I think we need to align upon is that franchisees, so there's the franchisor, which is the corporate head office, and then there's the franchisee. And the franchisee is that independent small business owner who lives and works and contributes in the community in which they live.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes there's that myth or that disconnect, and people sometimes don't really understand the role of the franchisee. They are that independent small business owner, but they're in business for themselves, just not by themselves, because they have the support of the franchisor.
Yes.
So I just wanted to align on some of those steps before we start.
I'm really glad you did that because so many people, franchisees, own a location, whatever franchise they're part of, and they do contribute a massive amount to our economy. And all they're looking for is, hey, I want to do really well and build a business in this country, right? So I'm glad you brought it up.
And it's interesting because Canada, we're a very franchise-friendly nation. Yeah. So Canadians on average interact with 3 to 5 franchises each and every day. And a lot of times they don't even realize it. So, where did you get your coffee in the morning? Did you drop off dry cleaning? Where did you grab lunch? Did you drop off your pet to get groomed in the afternoon? Where did you get dinner? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's franchise, 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 franchise. So each and every day. Okay, so now I've monopolized your podcast already.
Yeah, no, you haven't. I actually love what you added to that. So I look at your kind of your path, and what I love about your trajectory was you've really been at every level. So it's not like you skipped a couple levels and said, okay, hey, I'm going to wing it from here. You've actually had time at every single level along the way, which is great because we get that experience, but also sometimes painful because we want to get somewhere sooner than we did. But I always think it's the learning we do along the way. And we talked earlier, and I just, I do believe in that, luck comes to the best prepared, right? So when you look at where you are now leading the Canadian Franchise Association, how did your early days and experiences shape your leadership style today?
Oh, that's a great question. And I have worked at every level. I've been in the dish pit in a restaurant. I've been on the line in a restaurant. I've worked for a multi-unit franchisee, all the way up to signing corporate leases and franchise agreements and being an executive. And a couple of things I've learned: never ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. So if you're not willing to change the garbage, don't ask somebody else to change the garbage. It might not be the best use of your time, but leaders lead from the front. They don't lead from the back. And so that's one thing I've learned upon the journey. The other thing is I have been so fortunate. I have met fantastic people in every level and every company that I've worked with, I learn something each and every day, still today, from our members when they talk about their celebrations, when they talk about their struggles or their challenges, whether that's a franchisee I'm talking to or a franchisor or a supplier partner. And I try to keep that growth mindset. What can I take from this conversation, but also what can I give back to this conversation?
Yeah, you give what you get and you get what you give, right? It's so true. Let's go deeper into that for a second. You said you've learned something from leaders all along the way, and I love that because you've obviously had some really good leaders. Is there any one lesson that you said, hey, you know what, this person really affected and changed my game a bit just by maybe this one statement or this one action or something that he or she did that you said, you know what, I'm going to think about things a little differently now, and it changed your trajectory a bit?
Oh, there are so many. I don't know that I can name just one. So one of the leaders, a gentleman by the name of John DeHart, taught me all about core values. And we set the core values for the CFA when he was chairman of the board. And that has made almost every decision I've had to make very easy when you set those core values. So the core values of the CFA are growing together, learning together, and better together. A gentleman by the name of Bob Mazziotti, who was EVP at Little Caesars when I worked at Little Caesars, he taught me everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether it's a franchisee or we were on our way to meet with a famous sports figure at the time who ended up buying the rights to 40 Little Caesars franchise locations. And I was very nervous. And he was like, hey, just remember, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. A gentleman by the name of David Drucker, who's the president and CEO of the UPS Store Canada, past chair of the CFA, he taught me leadership is not a popularity contest. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and not everyone's going to be happy. So I could give you examples.
Yeah, no, I love it. That what I love is that because obviously we're recording, I can always go back and hear those again because I'm a big I love quotes like that, and I love just diving into what that statement actually means, right? So, and you know what I like, Sherry, is you didn't just say one leader, you've had many great leaders, right? Isn't it nice that leadership has evolved so much? And I'm a big believer in leadership without titles. I truly believe that. I don't think that you need to be sitting in a certain chair to be that leader. I think that we can all lead from within. And it's funny when you're in a room full of people, whether we're in a restaurant, whether we're in a laundromat or what, you can always, even if the person isn't the owner, isn't the franchisee, isn't the person, you can always see the true leaders just by the way they just carry themselves differently.
There's lots of stories I can tell. I had a leader who told me I'd never be anything more than a manager because I was female.
Yeah.
It was a man's world, right? But some of that propelled me to then set goals for myself. Like at one time I sat down and I set the goal, I want to be a vice president by the time I'm 40. And I want to be a CEO by the time I'm 50. And then that also makes decisions easy, right? As you chart your own path and your own, where do I need to improve my skills in order to get to that level, that goal that I've set for myself? Where do I need to improve my skills to get to the next level? And I think that's really important. And to me, personal leadership and leadership of a company are a lot the same. They're intentional. You have to be intentional, I think, on where you want to grow into. And then it's your responsibility as a human to get the skills, experiences, network with the leaders you can learn from in order to propel yourself to where you want to go personally.
Yeah.
And the same is true, I think, leading an organization, whether that's an organization with franchisees, whether it's an organization with staff, or you're a small business owner. I think it's the same. Where are your strengths? Where do you need to improve to get to the next level where you want to grow into?
Yeah. And you said there when you were saying, I want to be a VP by 40, I want to be a CEO by 50. What I love about that is really, if you write that stuff down, you have a goal first and foremost to go to. But back to your original statement about writing down the core values of the CFA, then you can actually go back and look and say, hey, what am I doing that works for me that's actually going to get me to that destination? And
Yeah.
am I holding myself accountable, doing the right thing the right way with integrity to actually get there? Sherry, what do you see as the most critical qualities for franchise leaders to succeed in today's market?
The world is ever changing and it seems to be evolving faster and faster and faster. I think franchise leaders need to be very intentional, as I mentioned early. They have to stay focused on what's their brand promise, what's the purpose of their brand, and what's the promise of the brand to the consumer. And then they have to connect with people. Franchising is a people business. So that connection with people, meaning connect with your franchisees. Have a franchise advisory council. Use them as to get feedback from as your sounding board, to bring them in behind the curtain as you're thinking about launching new initiatives, to get that critical feedback. Then franchisees can be leaders within the franchisee community because they've been part of that journey or they've been part of that process. I think you have to stay connected to your customer. You have to sit in restaurant, if it's a restaurant brand, and watch to see how your customer is interacting at store level. And I think it's critically important. And then you have to stay connected to your corporate staff. And so that connection with people and clarity of purpose and intentionality on your strategic plan and shutting out some of the noise because it can pull you off your focus. It can pull you away from your intentionality, trying to keep up with certain trends. Some trends are really important, like AI right now, super important. Please know what's going on and how it can change your business and your franchisee's business. But other trends, like the TikTok Tide Pod Challenge, I don't shut out all that noise, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
stay focused and understanding the realities that franchisees face day to day, frontline with your customer is really, really, really important. And creating that communication and that feedback loop from customer to franchisee, franchisee to corporate head office is super important.
yeah. I cannot tell you how much I agree with you. Actually, I was talking with, well, Dominic from Pizza Nova.
Yeah.
Such a similar message that he said as well. The great franchisors or the people that are just helping their franchisees lead through challenging times, great times, whatever, are just consistent in saying, hey, do what's right, stay focused. Don't forget the small stuff that actually helped us get there. And let's figure this out along the way. Right. So it's pretty amazing how when we dial in and we organize ourselves like that, we actually do great things.
And it's so true. And so the CFA, part of our role is we actually provide networking opportunities and we have a mentoring program. We provide lots of education, data, peer connections. Like we do things like we have CEO sessions. So at our upcoming convention, for example, and that it's closed door, it's CEOs of franchise brands only, where they can talk about what's going on in their business and learn from each other and share best practices. Because there are CEOs in that room that have over 1,000 units in Canada, and there are CEOs in that room that have 8 units in Canada. And there is if you're having any sort of challenge, there is someone in that room who has already encountered it, who has already solved for it. They've made mistakes along the way, and they're willing to share that information with people who are now facing the same issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've talked a lot about innovation and agility within brands and staying close. How do you manage, innovation, but still stay consistent to the branding of your brand with all the innovation that's going on with AI and things that you have to change? How do you keep grounded? And you probably experienced it, Sherry, just with the CFA alone. You guys have done so much over the last few years and, things that you can hang your hat on. But I'm sure that you just have to, hey, like, how do you maintain that focus with so much noise going around?
Well, this is not going to be a popular answer, but
Sure.
I'm a big believer in sell, not tell. So, and connect it to the why.
Okay.
So if I was a franchise leader, we talk a lot at the CFA to franchise leaders about, and create a franchise advisory council, have clear and open communication with franchisees, get that critical feedback from the front line, roll out initiatives together. Then franchisees can tell other franchisees, right? And there'll be early adopters of any of those initiatives. We do the same at the CFA, and it shifts that dialogue from here are the rules to here's the solution we want to build together.
Get it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with either franchise leaders or corporate staff, here's the solution we want to build together. And here's the reason why we want to build this together. And here's why it's important. And that collaboration often leads to a lasting impact that makes it better for everyone. For us at the CFA, we welcome member feedback. My members are not usually shy to give feedback. I welcome that. Sometimes I walk away, oh, that's interesting, and it smarts a little, but it makes us better in the long run because they took the time to actually share where they think we could be better or where we stubbed our toe or where we fell down. And that then the entire system, franchisor, franchisee, or us at the CFA, that entire system becomes stronger and more resilient.
It becomes contagious, right? Like that attitude becomes contagious when we're transparent and we accept feedback, which is tough sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to hear, oof, okay, I thought I had it this way, and I guess I was wrong. That's not how it was, right? It's hard sometimes to have those direct conversations.
And it's interesting because we launched our new strategic plan in January of 2024. In 2023, we did virtual focus groups with members. So we put out a call to all membership. Anyone who wanted to participate in these focus groups, we welcomed their input. And so we had a series of focus groups, and they provided us feedback on things we did great, the things we were not great at, and the things that we should start doing that were not even on our radar. So then we crafted up with a strategic planning committee of members, we crafted up the new strategic plan. And so we have been very intentional about, we know what our purpose is. We help everyday Canadians realize the dream of owning their own business through the power of franchising. It's what we do.
Yep.
It's why we do what we do. We have 4 strategic pillars: community, education, advocacy, and brand awareness. And everything we do is filtered through those 4 pillars. And that's the intentionality. And that came from direct feedback of our customer, our members. And that came from their franchisees to our members. And it's made us better. And I think through the education we now provide to our members and the advocacy we do with government on behalf of franchisees and franchisors, it's made the industry stronger. And bringing members together to share best practices has made this industry stronger.
Yeah.
And it's went from, in 2019, it was a $100 billion industry. You think, oh, that's a lot of zeros, $100 billion.
Yeah.
And now it's $133 billion.
Wow.
In 2025. So from 2019 to 2025, in 6 years, it has grown by $33 billion. It's now the 12th largest industry, but that's that community working together with their franchisees to grow their brands, provide great customer service to their customers within the communities. And it's a whole cycle of mutually shared success, right? And that's very, very, very important. And that community becoming stronger, more resilient, and learning and growing from each other.
Wow. I got to be transparent here. I'm shocked at the growth from 2019 to 2025. That is absolutely a shocking number. And that number doesn't happen unless you're doing some things that are really right and correct and, trying different things along the way. Let's talk about rebranding and trying different things. So you've led a lot of rebranding initiatives in your career over from when you started to where you are now. What role, in your opinion, does culture play in successful brand transformation?
Well, it's huge. It's huge. And it's that it depends on the type of transformation, whether it's a small refresh type of transformation or if it's complete overhaul, transformation, rebrand. Franchising is all about maintaining standards. and consistency and scalability, and that brand promise being delivered to the customer, whether it's in British Columbia or whether it's in New Brunswick. And if you're going to refresh or you're going to rebrand, once again, it goes back to communication with your franchisees. Why are you doing this? Why is this important? Why is it significant? And with the CFA, we did a rebrand a number of years ago. New purpose. Well, we didn't have a purpose. So when I joined, that whole purpose statement, mission statement, long-term vision, new logo, refresh look, et cetera, et cetera. And all those standards that are created, whether it's a brand standards guideline or how you're going to serve fries at restaurant level, certain spec, certain uniform, certain amount of salt, certain cook time, et cetera, those things protect the brand promise, right? That promise to the consumer. And that consistency is the backbone of franchising success. And it's that ability to replicate. Innovation is always important. Don't get me wrong. It's extremely important, but that ability to replicate and scale and deliver on that brand promise to the consumer is the most important thing.
Yeah. And you often talk about just the why, right? And getting feedback. I absolutely love that. What's one strategic decision that you made significantly that strengthened franchise relationships or organizational culture? I know you made many, and you're probably thinking, oh, I made a few of those, but what's one that you're proud of that you say, you know what? I think that decision really strengthened the relationship with the franchisee community.
So when I was with a brand and we were doing a rebranding and a new signage initiative, we notified the franchisees. We gave them 36 months notice that this is the journey we were going on. And then it wasn't just me, it was a group of leaders from that brand went across the country multiple times over the next 2 years into community, into regions, explaining why this was important. It started with the Franchise Advisory Council first, and many of them were the early adopters to the rebrand. And it was a significant rebrand. And we then ended up renovating 196 restaurants within 36 months. After that initial 2 year explaining the journey and how it was going to go went, and we changed the signage on this almost all the stores across the country. So, but it was that regional face to face. This is why this is important. This is the journey that we're going on. This is the direction we want to take. It's that intentionality on why this is important, but also taking the feedback from franchisee leaders as to, well, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? Or could this be done differently, et cetera? And then taking that feedback and integrating it into the plan. And then when it came actually time to rollout, it was actually much smoother.
Yeah, unreal. Sherry, you've been a leader at a whole bunch of different levels. As we grow in our leadership style and the positions that we have, we learn things along the way. If you had to talk to yourself 20 years ago and say, hey, I just want you to know this. This is one piece of advice I'm going to give my younger self about leadership that I really want you to take. What piece of advice would that be to yourself?
Don't wear high heels to the airport.
Okay, that's one. That's great.
2, be a better listener would probably be the advice I would give my younger self. Listen twice as much as you talk.
Wow. That's powerful because I think we could all take advice from that. Even today, I think some of us could take advice from that.
And someone once said to me, and it was a franchisee from a brand, and he said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah, for a reason.
I was in his restaurant and he said that, and I stopped and I thought about it and I said, yep, you're right.
Yeah, unreal. Sherry, I got one more question for you before I let you go, because I know you're a very busy woman. But that question is, if I could ask you to look forward, how do you envision the role of franchise associations like the CFA evolving to support future leaders?
The CFA and other associations like ours, I think we need to continue to provide opportunities for future leaders to interact and learn from current leaders. And so various events, networking, whether that's virtual or online, continue to share industry best practices as industries change and evolve very rapidly, as well as consumer demand changes rapidly. It's all about that sharing of information. And it's about providing best in class education, which the CFA does through our CFE program and all of our educational programming. We do over 70 events a year,
Wow.
live and virtual. I know it's on average over one a week,
Wow.
but that's where the real learning happens.
Sure.
And so we all went through entirely a virtual world coming out of COVID, and we're back. We do a lot of live events again now, and I think we need to continue to do that. But I see some organizations that have stayed just with virtual. And in my personal opinion, I think there's real magic that happens when people are face to face in the same room. There's something that happens. I wish I could quantify it, but there's something that happens in that. It happens occasionally on virtual, but really happens that industry best practice, that sharing, the nonverbal cues that you
Yes.
pick up live when somebody's uncomfortable or somebody's closed versus somebody's open and somebody is willing to share. I think all of that's really important. And I think we need to remain intentional about how important that is, that connection. And franchising is all about relationships.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the relationship between the consumer and the franchisee. So they go to, Susan's hair salon every month to get their hair cut. Susan's the franchisee, but they know her as a person. It's that human connection. So, or whether it's a restaurant and Hank goes to Ryan's A&W every week, he takes his kids there and his kids play hockey with Ryan's kids, et cetera, and supporting that local franchisee who lives and works, contributes to that community. Franchisee to franchisor, that human connection. And
Yeah.
then franchisor to supplier partners, other members of their industry, learning from each other, sharing best practices, finding out from supplier partners where the industry is going and things that maybe they should be considering for their business.
Awesome. Absolutely phenomenal answer. And you see, you're right on that human to human connection. I had a good discussion with Brian on that, Brian Baisley. And, during COVID, just the amount that he reached out to his franchisees and, just almost, you're not just a franchisor or franchisee. Communication could be so special if we actually just really understand. And to your point, listen and say, hey, what's going on in this person's world right now? And how can I help? And I'm a huge believer in you give what you get and you get what you give. So Sherry, with that, I can't tell you how grateful I am for you coming on the show today. People need to hear this stuff. I think you've done some amazing work. You and your team have done some amazing stuff over at the CFA, and I look forward to chatting and being part of that world and those events for many years to come. Thanks so much, Sherry.